What's going on, wrestling family? Welcome back to the channel. So these are the 10 stiffest WWE wrestlers ever. So before we get started, guys, please do me a favor. Hit that like button. Hit that subscribe button. Let's get into it.
Look at the angle. Look at the way she's got the angle set.
Oh,
my God.
Oh, man. Real quick, y'all. Shayna Baszler, during the black and gold era of NXT, two-time women's NXT champion, she was brutal. You see what she did to Dakota Kai. Go back and see what she did to Kairi Sane's arm. She was destroying people left and right, and I still can't understand why they couldn't copy and paste this formula to the main roster before she left and made her a mid-card champion. That would have worked out. That would have worked out. But anyway, it's crazy because the people who saw her, who just started watching wrestling or just came back to it like right before she left, maybe watched it in the past like year and a half, they will never know that same person that was in Pure Fusion Collection, I hate saying that name, is the exact same person that was doing this. They will never know. Like, when I talk about her, I feel like I'm talking about, like, I don't know, like somebody in NFL that's not who they used to be. Oh, Ezekiel Elliott on the Cowboys. Like, I could tell my nephews, hey, Ezekiel Elliott, he used to be killing in 2016 and 19. In his prime years, he was one of the best, if not the best, running back in the league around that time. And they're looking at Zeke now like, you talking about the guy that only could do not even 2 yards a carry? That same Zeke? Like, it's crazy, bro. And Shayna, it's not even really her fault. I mean, it's the way that they booked her. It has nothing to do with her losing a step. But man, it's crazy. It's crazy. Anyway.
The 10 stiffest WWE wrestlers ever. Number 1, John Cena.
What?
No, wait. That's the wrong list.
Oh,
when we're
okay.
talking about stiff in the ring, we're talking in wrestling terms as it refers to a wrestler working very snug or very hard hitting, where the strikes and moves appear or often appear to be more real or painful than usual. So let's start off with the real number 1, Loki.
Loki,
there are a lot of
for
things
sure.
you can say about Loki. However, the former TNA star is without a doubt one of the stiffest wrestlers to step in the ring. Loki took professional wrestling very seriously, with the former TNA star mixing both wrestling and MMA. Before coming over to WWE, Loki was known for knocking out wrestlers. In fact, there's an infamous video of Loki knocking out a wrestler at an Evolve show with just one kick. The match still continued even though the guy was legitimately knocked out.
Why?
Wondering why Loki just didn't go into MMA for real, as his feet were more lethal than Steve Blackman's. Loki's realistic approach to the sport made him stand out as something special because he was a believable badass. Yeah, looks can be deceiving in wrestling. Number 2,
Being like Loki versus like a Ken Shamrock or mainly a Ken Shamrock in a shoot match, that would be very interesting. But this is the reason why I have so much respect for professional wrestlers really quick. Not just because they put their bodies on the line every time we see them on the TV, but I think about the wrestlers who came from the mud. The people were in the dirtiest of dirtiest independent circus you can ever think of. Now, just think about how many times they got to face somebody who was probably as stiff as Loki. And they couldn't say anything about it because they're trying to make a name for themselves. They're trying to get their reps in. So they had to take it in order to get closer to their dream of possibly being in a WWE or one day a AEW or MLW, GCW, TNA, whatever, right? That's crazy. I could never do that, bro. I would instantly, like, I wouldn't really, but jokingly, I would have to turn into New Jack, bro. I would.
Hardcore Holly. Now, they don't call him Hardcore Holly for nothing. The former hardcore champion made his name in WWE during the 90s, and one of the most notable things about Holly is just how stiff of a performer he really was in the ring. Well, frankly, it's because many consider him a huge backstage bully as well. But Hardcore Holly's tough persona always felt genuine because he brought an intensity and edge that many other wrestlers just simply didn't have. Though Hardcore Holly doesn't have any documented knockouts on his resume, the former WWE star had an infamous moment during an episode of Tough Enough. Holly made a special appearance and wrestled the Tough Enough performers. Every punch, kick, and clothesline could be felt through the TV screen, but his match against Matt Cappotelli is why this particular episode stands out the most. Hardcore Holly beat his ass from pillar to post, and there was a point where it genuinely seemed as if Holly knocked out the wrestler in the ring. Now, Holly admitted in past interviews that he's very stiff in the ring because
I'm surprised he had the S print on his forehead. He had them sketches all over his face.
he likes his moves to be believable without being real. But perhaps
All right, I mean, you can't say that and do all that to Cappotelli, bro. It was real to him.
his moves were too real on Tough Enough, and Holly expressed his regret over the beating he gave Matt Cappotelli on the two-man Power Trip Wrestling podcast.
The thing is, I was just going out there and I was just doing what I normally do all the time. And see, in Matt's defense, he didn't know me. He didn't know how I wrestled and stuff like that. And I did not mean to kick him and hit him like I did with my boot, because my boot is what got him. If you watch the film, it's like he was flailing in the corner stuff, and my foot caught him, which accidents happen in wrestling, and I had no intentions of doing that, going in there and doing that to him whatsoever, despite what people at home sit there and think that I did on purpose that watch. Me and Matt are cool. I hate what he's going through now. It's terrible thing that he has to deal, because he's such a good guy, he's such a good person and a nice guy. I just hate that he's going through it.
Now say what you want about.
Wait a minute, hold on. What is he going through? How did Matt Capitelli die? Oh, wow. He died from brain cancer June 29, 2018. Man, prayers out to his family. That's crazy. That's crazy.
Hardcore Holly, but he can take a beating as much as he can give one. The man broke his neck on live television, and he suffered one of the nastiest cuts ever seen in professional wrestling. So while he may be stiff, Holly is also a man who can take the punishment as much as he dishes it out.
Yeah.
Number 3, China. Now in the cases of Loki and Hardcore Holly and most of the names on this list, they were stiff because they wanted to make wrestling look as real as possible. But in the case of the 9th wonder of the world, China, unfortunately, she was pretty stiff because the former Intercontinental Champion wasn't that good of a wrestler. The WWE Hall of Famer is a name that is cemented in professional wrestling for eternity. China broke down barriers for women, and she still remains the only woman to hold the men's Intercontinental title. But China was still developing as an in-ring performer. Chris Jericho flat out stated that he didn't like working with the WWE Hall of Famer because of her inexperience.
Terrible.
Really?
She was terrible to work with. She wasn't good, but she thought she was. And she also was in a position where they were pushing her really big that she could beat up guys. She couldn't. I never got that credit. No one ever once said, you're making her look good. It was the other side of the coin. I got in big trouble from working with her, because at one point, I remember when I first started working with her, Vince was like, don't treat her like a woman, treat her like a wrestler. And she was really stiff too, which means she worked very strong. Listen, and I'm not talking bad of her, I'm just telling the truth. So when we worked together, it was a solid fight in a lot of ways. And I remember one time she got a little bit of a black eye from me, and you would have thought I'd cut her arm off with a chainsaw. Like, I got in so much trouble, and I was like, fuck, like I didn't do it on purpose. But so it was a tough position for me to be in. It was my first real angle in the WWE, my first story. I mean, I did the best that I could, and I think her best matches that she ever had were with me. Hopefully prove something to the people that had to prove things to, but there was a lot of issues with working with her.
Although China wasn't a top-level wrestler, she was certainly a tremendous character that managed to maintain a popularity throughout a WWE run. Number 4...
So here's the thing, and RP to China, and this may seem like this sounds like blasphemy. But here's my question to you guys. I'm not talking about accolades, because it doesn't even make sense to compare the two. I'm not talking about any of that. I know people want to talk about Rhea Ripley, but in my personal opinion, I feel like Rhea Ripley is a way better wrestler in the ring than China was. China was good, but Rhea Ripley, I think she's way better. So I don't want to compare those two. But what I do want to compare is this the same effect we have with like Jade Cargill? Because a lot of people believe that Jade Cargill isn't that experienced in the ring, but she has a fantastic looks that takes her over the top. Her aura, the way she looks, all of that stuff takes her over the top, which it sounds like that Chris Jericho is arguing in this interview that he had, that China was inexperienced, but as the person who's narrating this whole compilation is saying that she had a great look that everybody liked, which I can agree with, because during the Attitude Era, people, first of all, they were fearing her because she was so huge. She was cock diesel. And then later on, guys were, into her. So would we say that Jade Cargill could be, in a sense, the new version of China by those descriptions, not by accolades, not by, her being, not about anyone being in any factions or anything like that? Let me know in the comment section.
JBL, JBL was another notorious bully behind the scenes. While the former WWE star got checked by veterans like Steve Blackman and Ken Shamrock, as Blackman legitimately knocked out the former WWE champion, it was reported that the former champion worked a very stiff style against the rookies. There's even rumors that Vince McMahon would force a wrestler to work with JBL as a punishment. Now, it's not surprising that JBL is a stiff worker in the ring. For most of his career, he had to play a beer-drinking badass with a take-no-prisoners attitude. JBL had spoken about being stiff and admitted to having 2 different clotheslines from Hells for guys he liked and guys he didn't like. Now, it's not clear if JBL started out wrestling stiff or if he developed that style along the way, but the former champion grew up in an area where being stiff was rather common amongst wrestlers. JBL has documented receipts from wrestlers as well, so the former WWE star didn't seem to have too much problem getting hit back like Hardcore Holly did. Number 5. Goldberg. Goldberg should be one of the least surprising names on this list.
Yeah, he do it on accident and by accident. He the only person that's accidentally and on purpose stiff.
The WWE Hall of Famer was a former powerlifter and mixed martial artist who was thrown into the Lion's Den because WCW just liked his look. Goldberg was in the same category as China, as he worked stiff because he didn't receive the proper training. It's also a big reason why Goldberg didn't work long matches for a long period of time. WCW managed to hide his weaknesses, though Goldberg's inexperience and recklessness would shorten a wrestler's career. Ever since that infamous kick at Starrcade 1999, Bret Hart has been shouting from the rooftop of how much he hates the former WCW World Heavyweight Champion. It was the stiff kick to the head that gave Hart a concussion and shortened his career. Goldberg was far from the worst wrestler on the planet, but he was a prime example of what could happen when you put a man inside a wrestling ring without too much training. Number 6, the Nasty Boys. And the Nasty Boys were one of the most popular tag teams in the mid-90s in WWE. They weren't really known for their wrestling, but they were certainly one of the most entertaining, which is why they had runs in WCW, NWA, and WWE. The duo of Brian Knobbs and Jerry Saggs were notorious backstage bullies, with various reports of the duo getting into fights against top names like Ken Shamrock, Kevin Nash, and Scott Hall. In a match with Hall and Nash at a house show in '97, Jerry Saggs felt that the Outsiders were purposely working stiff, so Saggs returned the favor by knocking out some of Hall's teeth. Their match turned into a full-blown fistfight, with Saggs getting fired because of it. But Knobbs was no stranger to being stiff himself. He carried himself as a tough son of a bitch, with Knobbs being even so bold as to throw a racial slur at New Jack's way. He ended up getting knocked out for his troubles, as New Jack was not somebody to F with in the ring.
He ain't the one.
It's unknown why the Nasty Boys felt that they needed to work so stiff, but as we mentioned, the culture was quite different in the 80s and 90s, so it really wasn't a big deal then. Surprisingly, WWE gave Brian and Jerry a tryout match in 2007. They worked a match against Drew McIntyre and Dave Taylor, and the bout was considered a complete disaster. Most reports claim that Hobbs and Saggs were very stiff with the duo, and other reports state that the Nasty Boys didn't particularly take the audition very seriously, as they thought they had the same star power in the late 2000s. Whatever the case may be, their style was a good fit for Brian and Jerry during the era of wrestling, and even most of the guys wish that the former WWE Tag Team Champions took it easier on them. Number 7, Vader. Vader is a big man, so when you have a big guy like that wailing on you for a good minute, you'll be guaranteed to have some bruises once the match is all said and done. But Vader wasn't like the Nasty Boys. Though his powerful strikes and hard-hitting moves worked for Vader's character, many have described Vader as a teddy bear despite being a stiff worker. In fact, Road Dogg may have found the key to stopping Vader's stiffness. The WWE Hall of Famer recalled on the first episode of his Oh You Didn't Know podcast on working with Vader, and he describes getting his ass beat by this guy every time they stepped into the ring together. He recalls having a conversation with his brother, who stated that Road Dogg needed to get his respect. Getting Vader's respect meant being stiff right back at him. Road Dogg didn't believe it, but he got so fed up with Vader beating the snot out of him that Road Dogg clocked him good with a couple of fists right back. From then on, it was smooth sailing between the two. But in the case of Vader, it sounded as if the Hall of Famer needed to trust his opponents first. He was stiff, but safe. Vader's never been painted as a bad guy, but he had no qualms about giving a hard hit right back. Number 8, William Regal. Now everyone's favorite Englishman doesn't hide his aggressive side. Regal has mentioned on an episode of Tough Enough that he hits people very hard in safe places. That means his chops will leave his opponent's chest bright red, or his uppercuts will have an extra Mortal Kombat-like oomph behind them. Regal is a technical wrestler like Bret Hart, and he can get into wars with some of the best strikers in the world, but he can also out-grapple most names in the business. I'll just ask Bill Goldberg. On the February 9th, 1998 edition of Nitro, these two had a very infamous match. Remember when we said that Goldberg's stiffness is due to his inexperience? Well, that inexperience played a big factor here as Regal outsmarted the former WCW World Heavyweight Champion. Now, this was supposed to be a squash match that continued to show off the dominance and strength of Goldberg, but Regal was reportedly told to have a competitive match with a WCW star. Regal made Goldberg look like a complete amateur, locking him in holds that he couldn't get out of and striking him pretty hard with punches and uppercuts. Goldberg managed to win the match, but it killed his mystique. Regal was fired shortly after this match, and he toned down his stiffness when he got to the WWE, but he didn't hold back against other stiff wrestlers like Finlay or Chris Benoit. Number 9, the Dynamite Kid. But what made Tom Billington, aka the Dynamite Kid, different was his style as an in-ring performer. He was a hard-hitting, fast-paced high flyer who went out of his way to master his craft in professional wrestling. In some ways, that was a detriment to the former WWE star, as the Dynamite Kid pushed his body past his breaking point. The Dynamite Kid may have been one of the best wrestlers in the world, but he was considered a bully in and outside of the ring. Plenty of wrestlers didn't like working with him because his stiffness would actually hurt them. There was an instant where Mick Foley suffered a dislocated jaw because of the former WWE
Mick Foley looks so different, bro. It's crazy.
The Hall of Famer talked about the incident himself on Steve Austin's Broken Skull sessions, where Foley was spun in the air by the Dynamite Kid and then he was hit with a hard clothesline. Billington laughed at the situation. Many people believe that he took pleasure in hurting people in the ring. But Foley isn't the only man who had the displeasure of dealing with Kid. Bret Hart, Jacques Rougeau, and even his own wife didn't particularly have good things to say about him. It's not exactly clear why Billington felt that he needed to be a bully in the ring, but the former WWE star was dealing with alcoholism and drug abuse, so it's possible that his substance issues played a big factor in the way he treated people. And number 10, King Kong Bundy.
King Kong Bundy
had his ribs injured during a match against King Kong Bundy. Hillbilly Jim said that Bundy was killing him every time they were in the ring. There's not many guys had bad things to say about Bundy as a person, but the former WWE star didn't have a problem holding back whenever he was in the ring. Then again, when your name is King Kong Bundy, it makes sense why Bundy was such a stiff worker. His job was supposed to be imposing and scary, and Bundy's style complemented his character perfectly. Despite Hogan injuring his ribs during their feud, the former WWE champion has stated that it was one of his favorite rivalries. The big man may have never won any titles in WWE, but he certainly made a lasting impression as he was one of the better workers as a big man, even though he gave Hogan hell in the ring. But there you have it, folks. 10 of the stiffest WWE.
Man got destroyed by Humpty Dumpty. I'm just playing. King Kong Bundy, salute to you, bro. I believe he passed. But anyway, let me know what you guys think in the comment section. If there's other wrestlers who are way more stiff than the ones that are listed here, I would like to know in the comment section. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you guys are having an